My mother's voice cut through the laughter like a blade. "There's no room for you here, Rosalie." For a moment, I thought she was joking, but then I saw the way my brother smirked, the way my father avoided eye contact, and the way my daughter Maya's face crumpled in confusion. The golden light from the Christmas tree flickered across their expensive ornaments, every glimmer mocking the emptiness growing in my chest. I had spent the whole day cooking, wrapping gifts, and praying that maybe this year would be different, that maybe my family would remember we were one of them too. But as the silence stretched, I realized something unbearable. We weren't family. We were outsiders at our own blood's table. If you're enjoying this, please subscribe and share. Your support keeps the stories coming. I stood frozen on the doorstep, the cold air biting at my cheeks, clutching the casserole dish I had made for the dinner I was now forbidden to attend. My mother crossed her arms, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "It's just, there's not enough seats," she said, her voice dripping with false regret. "We already have 12 guests, and honestly, Rosalie, it's awkward when you show up uninvited." My daughter's little voice broke the air. "Grandma, we came all the way for Christmas." My mother's lips tightened. "You should have called first, sweetheart." I could feel my daughter's hand trembling in mine, and when she whispered, "Mom, why don't they want us here?" I had no answer. My brother, Logan, stepped forward, his cologne thick and suffocating. "Rosalie, don't make a scene. You know how Mom hates drama." Drama? That was their word for every time I tried to speak up. I swallowed hard, the humiliation burning my throat, and forced a smile that felt like it might crack my skin. "Of course," I said quietly. "Wouldn't want to ruin your perfect dinner." The door shut behind us with a soft click that felt louder than any scream. Snow was starting to fall, gentle and cruel, coating the driveway in a white sheet that glittered beneath the porch light. Maya pressed her face against my coat, her small body shivering. "It's okay, baby," I lied, my voice trembling. "We'll go home, make our own Christmas." But inside, I was grumbling. I had spent years bending over backward for these people, helping them out of debt, babysitting their kids, taking care of my father when no one else would. I was the quiet one, the fixer, the fool who mistook manipulation for love. I even loaned money to Logan to start his business, money I never saw again. Every time I stood up for myself, they'd say I was ungrateful, dramatic, difficult. And tonight, they had decided my daughter wasn't good enough to share their table. The drive home was silent except for the sound of the tires crushing snow. Maya stared out the window, her reflection pale and sad against the dark glass. I wanted to tell her it didn't matter, that we didn't need them, but I couldn't bring myself to lie again. When we reached our small house, the warmth from the heater was a weak comfort. The tree in our living room looked smaller than I remembered, the lights blinking like tired eyes. Maya went straight to her room without a word, leaving her coat half on. I stood in the kitchen staring at the casserole dish, and before I knew it, tears were falling, hot, furious, relentless. Every memory of every insult, every dismissive laugh, every time my mother made me feel less than, came crashing down at once. My phone buzzed, a message from my mother. I opened it with shaking hands. "Don't be childish, Rosalie. Family gatherings aren't about feelings. Grow up." I stared at the words until they blurred, then dropped the phone on the counter. Something inside me snapped, not in rage, but in clarity. They would never change. They didn't want me strong. They wanted me small. And for years, I'd let them have that power. But not anymore. I walked into my daughter's room, sat beside her on the bed, and brushed the hair from her eyes. "Hey," I whispered, "next year, it's going to be different. I promise." She looked up, her eyes glossy. "Different how?" I smiled, though it hurt. "You'll see." Over the next few weeks, I poured my heartbreak into action. Every night after Maya went to sleep, I worked on designs, proposals, and grant applications for the event planning business I'd been too scared to start. For years, I had been told I wasn't capable without my family's help. Now, I would prove them wrong. The house became a war zone of sticky notes, coffee cups, and dreams scribbled on napkins. Some nights I cried from exhaustion, but I kept going, fueled by something new: freedom. I sold my car, downsized everything, and poured every dollar into building my brand from scratch. When my first small event went viral online, a charity gala for a local shelter, I could almost hear my mother's shocked silence across town. Maya began to smile again, helping me fold invitations and wrap decor. We danced in the kitchen while string lights flickered above us, our laughter echoing through the little house like healing. For the first time, home didn't feel empty. It felt ours. And just when I started to believe in peace, fate decided to test me again. One evening in February, I got a call from my cousin Brooke, the family's gossip queen. "You're not going to believe this," she whispered, her voice dripping with excitement. "Your mom's hosting another family gathering next month. Big one. Everyone's invited." I almost laughed. "Everyone?" She paused. "Well, except for you." I felt that old sting, sharp and familiar, but before I could reply, she added, "But wait. Logan's bragging about some big deal he landed with a major client. He said the company is sending a private helicopter for him." A helicopter? My brother, who still owes me thousands, now playing the part of the golden child again. I ended the call with a polite lie. "I'm happy for him." Then sat in silence, my mind spinning, because she didn't know what I knew. The major client Logan was talking about was my company, the one he had no idea I owned under a different name. I had built success quietly, in the shadows of their arrogance. And now, without even realizing it, they were about to walk straight into my world. The thought sent a slow, electric smile across my face as I whispered to myself, "Merry Christmas, Mom." By the time the next family gathering rolled around, the entire town seemed to be talking about it. My mother's Christmas parties had always been her battlefield, a place where she paraded wealth, influence, and control like trophies. This year, it was the biggest one yet, according to Brooke's nonstop updates. She said the mayor was coming, that Logan had connections now, and that the family was finally getting the recognition they deserved. I listened quietly, nodding through every word, knowing none of them realized they'd soon be celebrating under my company's banner. Because the event management firm they'd hired, Luna Crest Events, was mine. Every chandelier, every floral arrangement, every single detail of their perfect night was about to carry my hidden fingerprints. I didn't want revenge. I wanted revelation. I wanted the truth to stand, naked and undeniable, right in front of the people who had spent their lives convincing me I wasn't enough. So when my assistant Michael handed me the final schedule that morning, I could barely contain the tremor of satisfaction running through me. "You're sure they don't know?" he asked, raising his eyebrow. "Not a clue," I replied. "Mom thinks she's dealing with some fancy new firm from Boston." He grinned. "You really are something, Rosalie." I shrugged, though my heart was thundering. I just got tired of begging for a seat at their table, so I built my own. The hours slipped by in a blur of final touches. The glittering ice sculptures, the catering team rehearsing the timing of each course, the band tuning their instruments. It was a scene straight out of the kind of life my mother always flaunted, but never earned. And as dusk fell, I stood in the balcony of the grand estate, watching the first guests arrive in tailored coats and polished smiles. I didn't wear sequins or silk tonight, just a simple black suit and the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needed to prove her worth. Inside, laughter rang like glass breaking. My mother was glowing in her red gown, shaking hands, posing for photos, her every gesture rehearsed. Logan stood beside her, soaking up attention, boasting about his latest deal. I stayed behind the curtain, near the back hallway, listening as he bragged. Yeah, this company, Lunacrest, they're top tier. They're flying their head coordinator in by helicopter tomorrow. The owner's some powerhouse woman. Can't wait to meet her. My lips twitched. Soon enough, I whispered under my breath. As the night unfolded, the perfection my mother had paid for began revealing small cracks, deliberate ones. The seating chart had been adjusted, placing Logan's bragging investors directly beside a charity organizer he'd once insulted. The music cut off for half a second during my mother's grand toast, just long enough for murmurs to ripple. Nothing cruel, nothing obvious, just poetic little reminders that control is an illusion. I walked the perimeters like a ghost, invisible to the people who had once made me feel invisible. Then, just as dessert was being served, a soft hum filled the air outside. Heads turned toward the glass doors. The sounds grew louder, steadier, the unmistakable rhythm of a helicopter descending onto the estate lawn. Guests rushed toward the windows, whispering excitedly. That must be Logan's client, someone said. My mother's eyes gleamed with anticipation. Finally, she whispered, we'll meet the woman who matters. I waited a few beats before stepping forward from the shadows, heart pounding. The crowd parted slightly as I approached, confusion flickering across a few faces who recognized me but couldn't quite place why I was here. My mother's expression froze the moment she saw me. "Rosalie," she said sharply, "what are you doing here?" I smiled softly. "Working." She blinked, confused. "Working?" Michael appeared beside me, handing me the event clipboard. "Ms. Bennett, the press team's ready for your announcement," he said smoothly, his tone just formal enough to make the room shift. "Whenever you're ready." The color drained from her face. "Ms. Bennett?" she repeated, her voice cracking. "Yes," I said quietly, turning to face her fully. "Rosalie Bennett, founder and CEO of Lunacrest Events, the company you hired to host your party." For a second, time stopped. The only sound was the faint hum of the helicopter outside, its blades slicing the air like truth cutting through denial. My brother's grin faltered, replaced by stunned disbelief. My father's hand twitched against his wineglass. Guests exchanged shocked glances, whispering. And my mother, my perfectly composed, controlling mother, stared at me like she'd seen a ghost. "I thought it was only fitting," I continued, my voice steady, "to finally give our family the celebration it always wanted. Prestige, luxury, attention. You've got it all tonight. Only difference is, this time it's mine." Laughter bubbled in a corner, someone too drunk to read the tension, but most just stared, frozen, unsure whether this was a humiliation or a miracle. My mother's mouth opened, but no words came. But Logan, however, found his voice, sharp and defensive. "You're lying. You couldn't afford something like this." I turned to him, the calm in my tone sharper than any scream. "You're right. I couldn't. Not when I was too busy paying your debts." Gasps rippled through the room. Logan's face went crimson. "That's not—" "It is. And you know it. Every cent I gave you, every time you swore you'd pay me back while calling me pathetic behind my back, this is what you bought me instead. Freedom. My mother tried to step in, her voice trembling now. Rosalie, this isn't the place. No, I said, cutting her off. This is exactly the place. The stage you built to prove you were better than everyone else. So let's be honest for once. I motioned toward the staff, signaling the lights to dim. On the projector screen behind the band, a video began playing, the highlight reel of Lunacrest's charity work. Children's hospitals, shelters, scholarships for young single mothers. The logo glowed at the ends like a sunrise. I turned back to the guests. This is what success looks like, I said softly, not cruelty disguised as family, not shame passed down like inheritance. This. When the lights came back up, my mother's mask had cracked completely. She looked at me not with anger, but with something far worse. Fear. Fear of being exposed, of losing control. You made a fool of us, she hissed under her breath. I leaned in close enough for only her to hear. No, Mother, you did that the night you told my daughter there was no room at your table. For a heartbeat, everything was silent. Then applause, soft at first, then swelling, filled the hall. Guests who had watched years of her cruelty unfold in whispers now clapped not for revenge, but for justice quietly served. Maya, standing near the doorway in her new dress, beamed at me through tears. And then, as if the universe itself wanted to punctuate the moment, the helicopter door opened outside, and out stepped a man with a Lunacrest badge, holding a thick envelope. Delivery for Ms. Bennett, he said. The crowd turned again, murmuring as he handed it to me. I opened it slowly, the company logo of one of the nation's biggest investors staring back at me. They wanted a partnership, nationwide contracts, multi-million-dollar funding. I looked up at my mother, her lips trembling. You said there was no room for us, I murmured. Turns out, we built our own sky. Her wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered across the marble floor. And as everyone stared, I smiled faintly, feeling the power I had been denied my whole life rise in me like fire. But before the night could end, Logan stepped forward, his eyes dark. You think this is over? He said quietly. You think success makes you untouchable? I didn't answer because I could already see it, the jealousy, the desperation, the storm he was about to unleash. And I knew this story wasn't done. Not yet. The days following that night unfolded like the slow settling of dust after a storm. The gossip spread through the town faster than winter frost. Whispers carried in every grocery line, every cafe, every workplace. Rosalie Bennett, the daughter who dared to humiliate her own family at their Christmas gala. Some said I'd gone mad with resentment. Others called it poetic justice. But truthfully, I didn't care what any of them thought. For the first time in my life, my peace didn't depend on anyone's approval. My mother's calls came daily at first. Blocked numbers, voicemails dripping with manipulation, her tone swinging between pity and rage. You've ruined your father's reputation, she said in one. You've destroyed our family name. In another, she hissed, you'll regret this when no one wants you. But the difference now was simple. I didn't answer. Every time the phone rang, I let it vibrate into silence, watching it like a relic of a past life. My father sent a letter instead, his handwriting as stiff and formal as the man himself. You've humiliated us beyond repair, it read. You've broken this family apart. I folded it neatly and placed it in the fireplace, watching the words curl into ash. Family, I thought, had been broken long before that night. It just took honesty to expose the cracks. Maya, on the other hand, flourished. She had started to smile again. Not the careful, polite smiles she used to wear when trying to please everyone, but real ones, wide and unguarded. She had a confidence that I'd never seen before, the kind that comes when you grow up seeing your mother stand her ground. Sometimes, late at night, I'd find her sketching by the window, the snow light catching her hair. "Do you ever miss them?" she asked once, her pencil pausing midline. I thought about it for a long moment. I miss the version of them I hoped existed, but I don't miss being someone I'm not. She nodded quietly, and I realized that maybe the greatest gift I'd ever given her wasn't protection, it was truth. Luna Crest events exploded in popularity after that night. The viral clip of my calm confrontation had been shared across social media, captioned with words like poise, power, grace under fire. Within months, we were booking clients across the country: New York, Chicago, Los Angeles. Investors wanted in, sponsors offered deals, and media outlets kept calling for interviews. I accepted none of them. I wanted the work to speak for itself. My piece was no longer for sale, not even for publicity. I moved us into a modest new home, warm, modern, filled with sunlight. Michael, ever loyal, became not just my partner in business, but a quiet constant in our lives. He never tried to fix me or compete with me. He simply stood beside me, matching my strength with his steadiness. Over time, his presence became something deeper, something that didn't demand words to feel real. But peace, as I'd learned, has a way of being tested. It was early spring when the letter came, a formal notice from my parents' attorney. They were contesting ownership of the house, the same house I'd paid off entirely. The audacity made me laugh out loud, though part of me felt that old sting of betrayal, the kind that never truly disappears. I drove past the house once, more out of curiosity than nostalgia. The paint was peeling, the windows unwashed. It looked smaller somehow, as if the arrogance that once filled it had drained out. Still, seeing it stirred memories. Maya's tiny hands helping me decorate the tree, the way my mother used to criticize the way I wrapped gifts, and the countless dinners where my silence was the price of inclusion. But I didn't stop. I kept driving, realizing the only thing that belonged to me from that house was the lesson it taught me. Never hand over your worth to people who measure love by control. The court case was short-lived. Every document, every receipt, every transfer had my name on it. My lawyer, a calm woman with eyes like polished steel, dismantled their claims in under 20 minutes. My parents didn't even look at me during the hearing. My brother, bloated and bitter, muttered something about greedy women ruining everything. When the judge ruled in my favor, I didn't celebrate. I just walked out into the parking lot, looked up at the blue sky, and felt the strangest mix of grief and freedom, like mourning the death of something that had already been gone for years. Weeks turned into months. Life found its rhythm again. Maya got accepted into her dream university, a design program upstate. And the day her letter arrived, she screamed so loud the neighbors probably thought we'd won the lottery. In a way, we had. I hugged her tight, tears catching in my throat. "You did this," she said, her voice muffled against my shoulder. "You taught me to never settle for less than I deserve." I smiled through the tears. "You taught me the same thing." As she began packing for her first campus visit, I found myself watching her from the doorway. The same girl who once cried outside her grandparents' house, now moving toward a future that looked nothing like the pain we'd left behind. I slipped a framed photograph into her suitcase when she wasn't looking. It was from last Thanksgiving, our chosen family gathered around the table. Michael, our friends, even Jennifer, the young nurse who had once come to me for advice, smiling with her new fiancé. When she discovered it, she looked at me, eyes shining. "You're sneaky," she laughed. Just making sure you remember who truly loves you, I said softly. That night, after she went to bed, I sat at my desk with the old journal I'd been keeping since that first Christmas Eve. The leather was worn, pages filled with my handwriting, raw, painful, healing. I turned to the very first entry. She said there's no room at the table. I could still feel the sting in those words, but now they read like the beginning of a story that had led to exactly this piece. I picked up my pen and began writing the final entry, the closing of a chapter that once defined me. They said there was no room for my daughter at the table. Now there's no room left in our lives for cruelty. When I looked up, I caught my reflection in the window. The woman staring back wasn't the same one who once begged for acceptance. Her eyes were clear, her shoulders strong. The scars were still there, yes, but they'd become part of the armor, not the wound. The phone buzzed beside me, a text from an unknown number. For a moment, my breath caught. Old instincts, old fears. Then I opened it. Hope you're proud of what you've done. The same message as before. I didn't hesitate. I deleted it. Felt nothing but calm. My silence was no longer submission. It was sovereignty. Morning light spilled into the kitchen as Maya came downstairs, suitcase in hand. Michael was already there, making coffee, teasing her about forgetting her charger again. The air smelled of cinnamon and warmth. I hugged her one more time at the door, holding on a little longer than I meant to. Go make your world, sweetheart. And remember, it's okay to close doors that don't open with love. She smiled, nodding, and stepped into the crisp morning air. The sun caught her hair, turning it to gold. For a moment, I saw both of us. Years ago, standing in the cold outside my parents' house, and now here, free. As the car disappeared down the road, I felt something inside me shift. A final thread of grief loosening, replaced by quiet pride. Michael came up beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. You okay? He asked. I am, I said, and I meant it. He kissed the side of my head gently. You did it, Rosalie. You changed everything. I smiled faintly. Not everything, just what mattered. Later that afternoon, I visited the small community center Luna Crest had helped rebuild the previous year. Kids were laughing in the playroom, volunteers unpacking boxes of donated supplies. Jennifer was there, her engagement ring catching the light as she organized art kits. She saw me and ran over, hugging me tightly. You were right, she whispered. Boundaries are love, too. I smiled, watching her newfound joy. You did that yourself. You chose peace. When I left, snow had begun to fall again, soft, delicate flakes drifting through the quiet streets. I walked slowly, breathing it in, letting the cold kiss my skin. Every year before, winter had felt like something to survive. This time, it felt like something earned. Back home, I lit the fireplace and made tea, letting the house hum with stillness. No tension, no performance, just warmth. I thought about all the versions of myself that had existed. The obedient daughter, the desperate peacemaker, the woman who tried so hard to buy love, and I silently thanked her. Every broken piece, every scar, every sleepless night had led me here, to a life not defined by fear, but by choice. I sat down with the journal one last time, closed it, and placed it on the shelf beside Maya's baby photos. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the glowing street, at the faint echo of laughter from the neighbors' kids building snowmen. I didn't feel bitterness anymore, just gratitude for endings that make space for beginnings. When Maya called that night from campus, her voice was bright with excitement. Mom, I met my roommate, and guess what? They have a Christmas tree in the dorm lounge. I laughed. See, there's always room at the table somewhere. She giggled. I love you, Mom. I love you more. After we hung up, I stood in the quiet, the soft light of the tree reflecting off the window. The same woman who once stood trembling outside her parents' house now stood here, rooted, whole, free. The world outside shimmered in silver calm, and I whispered, not to anyone in particular, but to the ghosts of my past, "You can rest now." The next morning, I woke early, poured 2 cups of coffee, and watched the sunrise paint the sky in pinks and golds. Michael joined me at the table, half asleep but smiling. "What's next?" he asked. I thought for a moment, then smiled back. "Whatever we choose." And in that moment, as light flooded the room and laughter drifted from the radio, I realized the truth that had taken me years to learn. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's living so fully that their cruelty becomes irrelevant. They said there was no room for my daughter at the table. Now there's no room left in our lives for anything but love.